I grew up in middle class family in the city of Kolkata. I just by accident, more or less, happened to live right next door to one of the biggest slums in Kolkata. So I had a slightly resentful childhood in the sense that I was surrounded by kids who didn't go to school, who were playing all day, whereas I had to go to this extremely boring school every day. My parents had different expectations, and so I would see the people who I would play marbles with playing while I go to school and playing when I came back from school. The exposure, I think early exposure to the fact that poor people, my parents sort of explained to me that these were poor people, that they had very different lives, was I think in some ways it kept with me, in the sense that I would say that I think I became more of an economist in trying to understand how I can connect the economic theory that I knew, which really said nothing about why the poor would be different in any way, to the ideas that, or the exposure to the kind of facts of the world that I came with. So these two languages were not particularly commensurate. And so it took me a little while to understand that how to translate one into the other. I ended up in economics by accident. I wanted to study mathematics, and I went to study mathematics. There's a special dedicated, very well-known institute in Kolkata called the Indian Statistical Institute, where they give you an undergraduate degree in mathematics. And I went there and I realized that I wasn't cut out for it. It was not because I was not good at math, because I was actually pretty good at math, but because I didn't like the social life of that place. It was too serious, too kind of heavy. And so I decided I need to study something else. And in India, if you don't kind of plan your strategy, the only way you can change fields is by you losing a year. And I didn't want to do that. So I decided, fine, I'll study something else. What can I get into at this late date? And the answer was economics. So I went into economics. Well, I think in my mind, I've always been an Indian. I mean, it doesn't matter where I live or what affiliation or citizenship. It's really much more about what's the social milieu that directly inspires you, and what's the social milieu you react to. Who are the people who you think of when you do anything good or bad? You think of certain people, and those people for me are, lots of them are in India, and there's somehow that India matters to me in a sense in which I think no other country matters to me. To be honest, I think the sense from our research has been that actually, in some ways, the same insights go for poor people in many places. Maybe not in Sweden, where maybe it's just very different to be poor because the social welfare net works much better. But having worked in Indonesia, in Ghana, in Kenya, in India, which are very different places, I would say the similarities are more striking than the differences. I think people are, both creative and often sort of people. I think the idea that the poor are sort of fixed machines which have no choice is all wrong. People are both, poor people enjoy their lives, they look for opportunities, they try things, they are also scared by them, they make mistakes. All of the things that we do, they do. So in that sense, I don't think that one needs a different sense of psychology to study the poor. The poor, I think that in fact, I would say what we often miss with the poor is precisely the opposite, which is that they have the same psychology as us. We often underestimate how important that is, which is that we think the poor, they're starving, so they must only want to eat nutritious food. But in fact, they don't, because they also want to have fun. So if they might sacrifice some nutritious food to eat something that's tasty. And I think that's the psychology that we have as well. We were not going to just stay on a diet eating, whatever, quinoa every day. We're going to have something delicious sometimes. And I think that in that sense, I don't think the psychology is deeply different. And I don't think it's deeply different across the world either. Well, I think the question of climate change is sort of, I think, central to the challenges that the poor will face in the next 50 years. I always, being from Kolkata, I always think of what's going to happen in the southern Bengal Delta, which stretches across India and Bangladesh. I'm guessing 150 to 200 million people live there. All of that would be underwater unless we do something drastic. Where will these people go? I mean, this is 200 million people. That's many times the population of Sweden. Where will those people go? It's really, no one has an answer. Nobody's really thought about it. Suddenly, it's not easy to think of them as emigrating somewhere else, that many people. So what's going to happen to those people? It's one of these completely frightening questions. These are mostly poor people living on small amounts of land, which is all going to disappear. What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to their living? So I don't think there is a more pressing question from the lives of the poor than sort of finding a way to deal with climate change. On the other side, I would say that our learning from the work with the poor and in general from experimental work is that it's not that costly to make the adjustment to a different lifestyle. I think people, once they see that other people are doing it, they often just do it, and if they do it, then it sort of sticks. It's not that hard to get people to change their mind. It's not, if you just send people a notice which says you are among the top 10% of energy users among your neighborhood, that reduces energy consumption. So you just send them a letter, they read it and say, okay, fine, we can switch off the light or whatever. I don't see any reason why in America you have to have 75 degrees inside in the winter and 65 in the summer. That seems backwards somehow. I mean, there's just so many things that seem gratuitous in the way we consume energy that it seems to me that it is also a matter of political will and of finding creative solutions that people don't think of as onerous. But I think if you put this all together, I would say that on one side, I feel that this is absolutely critical moment to act. The other side, I really don't believe it's so hard to do so. Enormously important. I must say that I get bored with everything I do unless I have some relief. I try to arrange my day so that there is at least 1 or 2 hours when I'm doing something that I'm genuinely enjoying. Usually more than 1 or 2 hours, 3 or 4 hours when I actually enjoy whatever I'm doing. That might be, I love cooking, so I cook almost every day for an hour and a half or so. Or I like playing racket sports, so I usually arrange my day to either play tennis or ping pong or badminton or something like that. And I like, being with my kids. So I try to arrange my day so that there is enough relief. Otherwise, I get bored out of my mind very quickly. So I really love teaching, and one of the things in which I've invested a lot of my life is in kind of changing the way our field of development economics is taught. And I think one of the things that I would say I take some credit for is in the way, in many places now the course is taught. I see my students have gone and they teach the same kinds of things. So I do think that teaching, I think, is extraordinarily important. And in my life, I think, both my parents are economists, and they taught me an enormous amount, among other. There were other teachers who were inspiring too, but I think my parents in very different ways. My mother is a kind of a passionate activist, and my father is a very cool, collected, very careful debater, have been both very salient influences in my life. So I got into filmmaking I think out of a certain frustration with my ability to capture in my research the things that I was hearing. So there were so many wonderful stories that people tell. I mean, if you interview people, the thing that's striking is that, of course, you ask them, how many times did you go to the healthcare center in the last 6 months? And they don't just say 4. They say, oh yeah, I went 3 times, but there was this other time when I went and the door was closed. Does that count? Or I went 3 times and there was the other time when the doctor shooed me away. Does that count? So, and you hear that piece and you say, where do I record that? And I think the sense of that we have a whole narrative around each data point, and that those narratives are interesting by themselves, and there's a need to capture them. That was what inspired an attempt to make documentaries. Oh, my hope for the next 15 years is very much that I continue to do what I'm doing. I think I enjoy very much what I'm doing. I feel that this might open some more doors, give us a chance to do some more useful interventions, study some more useful interventions, make the case that these things actually matter. Maybe people will listen to us a little bit more as a result of the prize. I'm not envisaging a change in my lifestyle.